NBC Sports and the PGA Tour proudly present the FedEx Cup playoffs and live Wednesday coverage from the FedEx St. Jude Championship. We are on the range at TPC Southwind, presented by ReliaQuest. Memphis, Tennessee, that's where we are, a city that has hosted the PGA Tour since the late 1950s. This Ron Pritchard design has tested the world's best since 1989, and for the fourth consecutive season, it now holds down the opening leg of the playoffs. It's hard to believe that 36 regular season events have up and gone, and we've narrowed it down now to the top 70, and everybody trying to reach the BMW Championship next week and then ease their way into the Tour Championship and Atlanta. So glad to have your company, Ned Michaels, alongside Colin Swatton and Craig Perks. As we look ahead to the week, we'll start with you, Colin. What do you expect from this golf course? It's been redesigned. Some of the greens have some more areas for some hole locations, but there's just so much on the line for these players.
Well, you said it all in the opener there. Top 50, top 70 obviously in here this week, top 50 the next week. But so these are some of the hardest fairways to find this week. And then if you miss the fairways, you're in that Bermuda. And, you know, it is very difficult to judge how the ball's going to come out with regards to flyers. But then the point you made is obviously the greens. We've got new green complexes this week as well. They've got a little bit more fire and a little bit more sting. It's going to make hitting the fairways even that much more crucial this week.
And you're talking about a $20 million purse, 2,000 FedEx Cup points. Craig Perks, how do you come here mentally as you pull down for the week? What are you saying to yourself?
Well, I think more than anything, it's grit, it's will, and desire. I go back to last week in Greensboro. Matty Smith birdied 16, 17, and 18 on Sunday just to get into this field. You think of Chris Kirk, who came from 130th on the FedEx Cup 2 months ago, finished fifth at the Wyndham to get in here. I think that's what it's all about. And now you've got this, the top 50. It's, to me, nearly the top 50 is more important than getting to the Tour Championship, because you get in all of those 8 signature events, the guaranteed elevated FedEx Cup points. A lot of those are non-cut fields. So, yeah, it's getting to the top 70 is wonderful, but getting to the BMW, man, that is so important. It's nearly career-altering. It's sort of life-shifting as in your professional career.
Well, let's take a look at exactly what is on the line over the last couple of seasons since we've gone to the 70 in the playoffs and then to the 50 for the BMW Championship. 5 players, including 3 last year, have played their way inside the top 50. So that's the number. Get to the BMW Championship, and who knows what can happen from there. Maybe a Keegan Bradley kind of moment where you win the BMW Championship. And as you said, you open so many doors of opportunity into the 2026 season. If you make your way all the way to Atlanta in the Tour Championship, a 2-year exemption invitation to the Masters. It's just, if you're on the bubble, it's a week, somewhat like last week, where the pressure is so high, it's all you can do to focus on your game and try to block everything else out. And we look at a 3-time winner on the PGA Tour, and Wyndham Clark, who finds himself right there. He's 49th, the FedEx Cup list.
Yeah, Ned, it's all about timing to me. Wyndham missed the cut at the US Open at that point, 80th in the FedEx Cup, but then he's gone 11th at the Scottish, 4th at the Open Championship at Portrush. He shot 65 on Sunday, 12th at the 3M. He's coming in here 49th. Now, this is a guy that the 2 previous years were 3rd and 8th in the FedEx Cup. He desperately wants to get back into that top 50, top 30 for sure. You know, been fighting the driver a little bit. If you look at where he is currently, 83rd off the tee. And it's a guy that hits more than 85% of the shots left to right. And Cole, now we're working on a little bit of a downslope here. What do you think he's working on?
Yeah, well, Wyndham, you know, he does get very steep coming into the ball. We know that he does that tee drill where he likes to tee it up, hit some wedges, try and pick him off that tee. So this could be a couple of different things here. It could be, A, he's got a little too shallow Now he's working on trying to get a little steeper into the ball. Also, too, he could be potentially working on that rough that we talked about, you know, that Bermuda rough this week, just seeing how that ball's flying out.
Well, given the driving stats that Craig Perks just uncorked on us, maybe he's getting in a little practice from some odd spots. There's a great story about Tiger Woods doing that before he won one of his 8 events out at Torrey Pines. So the FedEx Cup standings on the bubble, I guess in some ways it depends on how you look at it. It's an opportunity that you'd love to have if you weren't inside the top 70 to be on this bubble, but it comes with stress. It comes with gray hairs and pressure. Min-Woo Lee, he is the bubble boy, just 1 point ahead of JT Poston and Kurt Kitayama on the heels of his win at the 3M Championship. He too making a movement. How about the season from Bud Cauley, who this time last year was on a medical exemption?
Yeah, I think that's one of the best stories of the year, to have those 4 top sixes, and it all started at the Players Championship. He spent a lot of his formative years as a professional here in Ponte Vedra Beach, and to regain his fully exempt status, and then he kept that momentum going.
It's such an interesting season for Wyndham Clark. He's found a little something, 3 top 20s in his last 5 starts, including that top 5 at the Open. He mentioned how important it was to him, and he was using his motivation to make the Ryder Cup team. And since he made those comments, he's now started to play a little bit better, the game more organized, and he's inside the top 20 on the Ryder Cup list.
Well, don't forget, too, he went almost 2 months without having a top 25. It's going to be incredibly frustrating, especially given the season last year coming into this year. We've seen some of that frustration. It started, obviously, when he had to WD back at the Players with a neck injury. You know, then he was throwing a club, broke a tee marker at the PGA Championships, and then what happened at the US Open Championships at Oakmont. A frustrated man, obviously, but as Craig has said, you know, definitely trending and moving into form.
Yeah, and coming into a venue where he played well, like 7th last year here at TPC Southwind.
The golf balls out here in front of him,
yeah, I think
they're serving a purpose?
Yeah, I think to me this is all start line, you know, to try and, if he's the one in the middle's the center line, if I'm trying to hit a small fade, big fade, huge slice, then you sort of get it on your start lines. I think and he's got a yardage book down there on the ground. We've heard that that's for sort of alignment of the face. So he hasn't had a coach for a long time. He was with Boyd Sumhays. They have not been together for 4 or 5 years. He's on his own. He knows his own golf swing. To me, what this creates or provides is simplicity. We want start lines, we want face angle, and we want to get a reliable ball flight. And I think when you get inside the ropes and you play, you don't want to get bogged down with anything technical. And I think these sort of drills, whether it's starting on a downhill, to me, I want to get a little steeper, but I also want to help me get to my left side. Sometimes you can hang back and get that left to right shot started too far to the right from a downhill lie. Those are all going to start left. So I think these things are really important, more from a feeling and a playing standpoint than a technical.
And it's a theme that we will continue to drive home as we make our way around the range here in Memphis. It's almost a counter trend away, not necessarily away from technology, but being able, Colin Swatton, to use the technology to simplify and better tailor and polish your practice.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, and Craig makes a great point there. You know, sometimes it's difficult as a coach to be able to simplify things enough for these guys. They want this information. There's more of it available. You'll see here Jordan Spieth obviously using, you know, the quad to get some numbers, to gather some numbers. So sometimes it's difficult as a coach to be able to not dumb it down, but just get your player to sort of understand that it is about the fundamentals. The point that Craig was making about club face, it's 80% of where the ball starts. You know, so if you don't have the correct grip, if you don't have the club face aiming correctly at address, let alone your chances of getting it to actually match up where you want it at the bottom of the swing, especially swinging in excess of 120 miles an hour with the driver. But everyone's different. They want different amounts of information.
I find the Spieth season fascinating. To me, it had some generosity, some good fortune for receiving 5 sponsors exemptions into signature events. One of those was at the Memorial, where he finished 7th. To me, Jordan's bounced back between brilliance and rust. Coming off the wrist surgery last year, he's sort of opined last year that he's already looking forward to next year. He said that at the Wyndham. This was more of a transition year, but a guy that's won 13 times and 3 major championships, was the best in the world, had one of the greatest seasons where potentially could have won the Grand Slam in 2015 in a season Grand Slam, not alone a career. But I think he's resigned to the fact that he is a long way behind Scottie Scheffler right now. And, he has seen some resurgence. There's been some inspiration by watching what Rory did at Augusta and playing alongside Scottie at the Byron Nelson. But there's a guy that is right now 52nd in the world. That's a tough climb back to where he once was.
32 years of age now is Jordan Spieth. Last win came in Hilton Head, 2022. But if you look at his statistics this year, Colin Swatton, in terms of ball striking, comparative to the last couple of seasons, he's actually been hitting the ball better than he has in a number of years, statistically speaking.
Yeah, I got the opportunity to follow him on the ground last week at the Wyndham Championship for 2 lots of separate 9 holes. And both of those times, he was off to fast starts on that front side. He was, I think, 4 under through the first 5 holes the first day, 3 under through the first 4 the second day. And there was a lot of vintage Jordan Spieth with regards to proximity to the pin, to your point. But also, too, we saw a lot of putts made by Jordan Spieth. He was almost 300 feet of putts through 3 days. So that putter starts to warm up, and you combine that with good iron play and decent driving. I think, he's gonna be back, but he's got a long road to climb to get back to that #1 spot.
I find, you do a lot of rehearsals. You see Jordan with the takeaway and trying to set the club and then getting right there, which is a sort of a very flat nearly across the line, and the club is now set at a pretty good spot. Cameron McCormick have continued to work extremely hard. Listen, Jordan and his wife have got 3 kids at home now, so the priorities change. Got to be a dad at the pool, not devote as much time, and if you want to ascend to the top, those 2 things are conflicting.
I thought they were looking down to the end of the range where they used to have the Rendezvous Ribs over there, the famous barbecue restaurant here in Memphis. Would come out and put on a little fiesta for all the players, and you could put your order in, and you'd have them a couple of ribs, and say, you know what, I think I'll stay here for a while.
I think as fit as Jordan is looking right now, I'm thinking he's bypassing all of that stuff. It's just lean and green, Ned. We should probably abide by that as well.
Nah. What fun would that be?
None.
So as Jordan moves through his bag, we're going to welcome in the 3rd member of our team who is down on the ground, seeing if he can't pick off some of the players for a word or two, and Sean Martin standing by.
Nice guys here with Wyndham Clark. Wyndham, a couple interesting things we saw on the range. First off, let's go with that setup of balls in front of you, kind of 7 in a line, perpendicular to your target line with the middle one teed up. What was that accomplishing for you?
So that's kind of how I try to get my swing path correct. And it's basically the middle one's a straight ball. The first right one's a tight draw, second one's a bigger draw, third one, and then same thing on the left side would be a fade. And so we just sit there and we'll hit straight balls, and then we'll hit draws and then fades, and we'll get the yardages, but it also helps shallow out my swing and figure out where my swing is for that day.
I'm guessing the other 2 things we saw are related, hitting balls off the downslope in front of the range, and then also the yardage book inside the ball.
Yeah.
I'm guessing to work on your path?
So the downhill is more of just a thing I always work on. I tend when I'm swinging bad to do this, so the downhill lie keeps me on top of it and swinging this way. And then the yardage book's for my face. And so what I'll do is I'll set up the club right behind on the back of the yardage book to get square, and then if I'm hitting a draw, I'll barely shut it, and if I'm hitting a fade, I'll barely. And so it's just like a really good check each day of where my face is at, where's my grip, and then my path.
And some really good play of late. How have these things you've been working on contributed to the good play we've seen recently?
Yeah, I did this for a couple years, and my ball striking was really consistent. And then some parts of this year, I kind of got away from it. And my caddy John and I said, hey, let's go back to 7-ball drill and work on that. And as we've done that, I've really got a lot more control of the golf ball.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
When all else fails, you go back to basics. That's what Cameron Young did last week. Said he wasn't hitting as many draws as he would have liked, and it was something he used to do. He went back to hammering the draw, and all he did was win by 6 at the Wyndham Championship. Welcome back to On the Range. We are live at TPC Southwind, presented by ReliaQuest. Temperatures are going to be nice, just into the mid-90s. It's Memphis in August, so it can be quite steamy. You got to be able to handle the pressure. It's the playoffs. Coming into the playoffs, last 5 winners. Cameron Young, it was just a matter of time, nearly had 10 runner-up finishes, and he's finally now a winner on the PGA Tour. Kitayama looked like his game was going the wrong direction, made some changes over the past few months, and it worked out. Scottie Scheffler, unbelievable. 4 wins since May 1st, average winning margin of almost 5.5 shots per tournament. Ryan Gerard had been knocking on the door, hadn't he? And he broke through at the PGA Championship. And what a run from Chris Goddard, who won the Genesis Scottish Open, backed it up with a 3rd-place finish at the Open Championship, and then a top 10 the next time he teed it up. I love this golf swing, this Cameron Young. It's like a wrecking ball, just collects the power, and anything it hits just gets eviscerated. Swatton, Mr. Swatton, what do you think?
Well, it's got that, Hideki Matsuyama pause at the top. He sort of, loads the gun, then pulls the trigger. There's no rush from the top. You see a lot of players that have a lot of speed, like a Cameron Young does. They get their hips a little high. They get out of position easy. And I think just that little bit of a pause at the top there just allows him to get everything organized, and he can swing down and through the ball.
Can I give you a little comp? here real quick. You talked about 7 times Cam Young had finished second before he won. David Duval had 7 second-place finishes. Then he won 3 events in a row, ended up winning 13 times. Cameron Young potentially is a favorite this week. And I would not be surprised if Cameron Young goes on one of these runs like David Duval does. But, 9 top 3s, we kept waiting. I love what he said after he won. It's not a burden that I hadn't won. It was just something I hadn't done yet. And so we all put these expectations. Man, you're so good. You've had all these finishes, high finishes in major championship. When are you going to do it? That can be really heavy. A lot of that is relatable to Tommy Fleetwood. Wasn't bothering Cam Young. And I think when Cam's at his best, the iron play's been a little sloppy. The driver hasn't really been that great. But those are weapons that some don't have. But 6th in putting for Cam Young the last 2 years. He was 145th and 158th. That is very similar to the ascent that Scottie Scheffler made with his putting.
And it wasn't a magic bullet that he found. It was they identified what was wrong, and they set about the therapy, essentially, of how he was going to get back to being an elite putter. And it took them almost the whole season. So
put in the hard work. That's all it was. A few tweaks at the setup, put in the hard work.
Now, he may have found a magic golf ball last week.
Yeah, that's true.
Put in a new golf ball, a prototype, and put in a new grip that has alignment aid on it, and it just all came together.
And that's his father, David, there, who's been a very trusted voice, really, since Cam took up the game when he was 7 or 8 years old.
Well, from one first-time winner to another, the youngest winner on the PGA Tour this season, 20-year-old South African phenom, Aldrich Potgieter, who is 43rd in the FedEx Cup standings now as he makes his way into his first foray into the playoffs. He's exceptionally talented, and he's wildly entertaining, Colin Swat.
Yeah, and a unique situation, too, where he actually has 2 coaches that work on his game. David Milne, a little shout-out to him back in Australia, was really his childhood coach, grew up sort of allowing him just to develop as a junior golfer at Joondalup Golf Country Club in Perth. And also, too, Justin Parsons takes care of things out here on the PGA Tour as well. So, unique situation. We've blended the 2 coaches together, and boy, oh boy, this kid is exciting to watch when he's got that big stick.
Yeah,
Cruises at 190, doesn't he?
Well, he leads the PGA Tour club head speed 125.7. Leads the PGA Tour ball speed 190. He was cruising around Sunday in Detroit when he won 195 mile an hour. He competed in rugby, which you and I know, Cole Swat, and wrestling growing up. And what that allowed him to do, it gave him this base and the ability to wind incredibly. And then through the wrestling, the torque, the ability for the body to move. And he said, from a physicality standpoint, he created the core strength, the lower body strength. He built the right things in his body to swing hard. And to me, this kid's 20 years old. And if you look at, he was the youngest ever to win on the Corn Free Tour, 17 years old when he won the British Am. He made a cut at LACC for the US Open at 18. This is not just a flash in a pan.
No.
He has won at every single level, accomplished, decorated amateur, and now he comes out here and literally could have won twice. Remember, he lost in the playoff at Mexico to Brian Campbell, and now he has this skill set, this ability, and this weaponry that very, very few had. You're right. This is going to be fun to watch the young kid play for a number of years, and now you've got the exemption from the win in Detroit to allow you to exhale and breathe.
Colin Swatton, you look at his resume, the results for the young man this season, 17 events, but he's missed 11 cuts, just 3 top 10s. But what does it tell you when he gets in contention, 3 top 10s, a win, and a playoff loss?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that stood out to me. It was kind of a hit and miss year, but when he hit big time. He was putting it all on red, so to speak. So I think a lot of that can be attributed to, he's only the only rookie to make it out here on the PGA Tour out of 35 guys. And I think learning the courses, understanding where to stay, where to eat, who you're traveling with, who you're not traveling with. And that's where he can really rely on Tim Clark, who really serves as a mentor for him out here on the PGA Tour. But yeah, he has a bright future ahead of him, that is for
Their
certain.
games were very similar.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar. He's got he's hitting a hybrid here that's above ball speed of the tour average with a driver. I just think from a sequencing standpoint, moves from the ground up, and we'll continue to refine some of the skills as well. He was a great putter throughout the season, fallen off a little bit. The short game needs some improvement, but yeah, when he gets in the mix, he's not afraid for sure.
Oh, I just saw Cameron Young, the most recent winner, the first-time winner on the PGA Tour. Our man Sean Martin caught up with Cameron.
Cameron, first of all, congratulations on the victory. What's it like showing up and being at a PGA Tour event days after that first win?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I've had a lot of congratulations, a lot of support from, all over. But it's been really cool to get a lot from the other players, from all my peers out here. So it's been fun. I mean, at this point, I'm kind of ready to go to work. That was kind of step one of these playoffs to me, because I was planning on playing 4 weeks in a row. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun and very rewarding, and at the same time, I'm kind of ready to get back to work.
What's it been like to you shared that journey with your father the entire time?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, he's put a lot of hours in on my behalf, and obviously he doesn't miss a whole lot of golf that I play out here. So it's been nice to have him around, and looking forward to my family coming in. And I haven't spent much time away from them either. They've been out with me, supporting me. So it's been strange to not have them, but they're coming in today, and looking forward to seeing them.
And on the technical side, last week you talked a lot about returning to primarily the draw with the driver. What are some things you have to do differently in the swing, or how do you have to change your pattern to just solely focus on that one shot?
Yeah, for me, it was just trying to turn a little bit more around myself on the way back. Just get the club in a slightly flatter plane, and from there it's just a feel thing. You just kind of have to build some feel, and get used to trying to start it right without aiming right. That's kind of my key, is if I have to start aiming right to start something right at the flag, then I know I probably have to work a little more at getting it a little flatter and a little more around me.
And this week, course conditions, new greens, usually pretty firm. How are those new greens playing, and what should we expect from TPC Southwind?
The greens are fantastic. They're rolling really, really nicely. They don't have, sometimes new greens, I feel like the ball wants to shimmy around a little bit, and these ones are rolling great. Obviously a little firmer than I have seen in the past, just given that they're new. But they've made some. I haven't played my best here, but I've liked it from the moment I've gotten here. So looking to change that pattern a little bit this week.
Perfect. Well, congratulations again, and have a great week here at the FedEx St. Jude Championship.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Maturation of a man. I remember in his rookie season, after finishing second at Riviera, he was asked the same question about players coming up to him, and he said, I don't actually know anybody out here well enough to be congratulated. He's the 1000th winner on the PGA Tour, Cameron Young. Scottie Scheffler coming up next. Gorgeous weather for a Wednesday practice round, Pro-Am. Little time on the range. One of the shots you better practice, you better be prepared for, is when you stand on the tee at the 18th. Let's take a closer look at the 18th at TPC Southwind, presented by ReliaQuest. The improved outcomes, the right approach always leads to improved outcomes. It's a hole that, Craig Burks, you told me you aim for the grandstands and the chalets down the right side.
The sweep and hook, and pray that I get in one of those bunkers. Yeah, I was terrified of the left miss here, so I ended up guiding it down the right. There is some bailout, but I think if you're able to, and I think now with as far as the ball goes, you can hit 3-wood, you can even hit a little less than that, and still hit a mid-iron here. But it is a terrifying tee shot, and then obviously, if you get out of position here with your second, you're going to pay dearly for it.
If you can find the green in regulation, you're rewarded. The greens are small. They're actually the 4th smallest greens on the PGA Tour this season, but it has sterilized some scorecards this 18th hole, and Justin Thomas knows a thing or two about it. Let's first look at the stats here. 4.14, couple eagles, 131 birdies over the last 3 seasons. A big one from Hideki last year. Remember, he birdied 17 and 18. And a couple of big bogeys. Eric Cole into the top 50 last year after finding the water off
Tom
the tee.
Kim doubled the last to finish 51st and missed the playoffs this year. I think there was a lingering hangover from the poor finish. He finished 6-6-6 at this event last year on Sunday.
Keegan Bradley, the beneficiary of those 3 sixes for Tom Kim. Well, Justin Thomas, he has won here before when it was the World Golf Championship just a handful of years ago. He knows how to handle the 18th. Let's hear from JT.
Justin, you're a past champion here. This 18th hole here at TPC Southwind, one of the tougher ones on tour. Can you start us off walking through the decisions you have to make off the tee there?
Yeah, it is. It's a very tough hole. All of it has to do with the tee shot. It can be an uncomfortable tee shot. You know, it's someone like myself who likes to work the ball left to right. You don't really feel like you have a lot of room there, and everything kind of gets working toward those bunkers. But I would say a lot of guys will be hitting less than driver, especially when it gets hot. If it gets a little firmer, driver or sometimes 3-wood can get up to those bunkers. So, if it is as little as 5-wood, as much as driver, but it really is just you got to step up on that tee, hitting something that you're comfortable with, and just get in the fairway.
And the approach pretty similar. What are you facing there for a second shot?
Yeah, hopefully after you hit a good tee shot, I mean, you could have anywhere from a wedge on the short end to as much as a 6 or 7 iron. But I'd say the strategy is very dependent on the tee shot. If you play aggressive off the tee and hit a really nice tee shot, you could have a short iron in to try to make birdie. But that's a hole I'd say that all of us, we would happily take 4-4s right now for the week.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much and have a great week.
Thank you.
4-4s, that would be an improved outcome if you could par the 18th here at TPC Southwind every time you played it. Who is that?
Well, I know one thing. That box that's sitting next to his Ted Scott in the golf bag, Randy Smith calls that a drama box. So I'm sort of surprised that it's there. But the most dominant #1 player in the world, I think, since Tiger Woods is Scheffler. To me, 17 wins, 4 this year, 7 last year, but 17 wins in his last 74 starts is pretty remarkable. And if you go 16 events this year, 13 top 10s, 8 top 6s, it's pretty amazing, to be honest with you.
Comes into Memphis leading the FedEx Cup points race for the 3rd time in 4 years.
But I like the fact, every time you see Scottie Scheffler working on the range, he's working on the fundamentals of the game. This is what's key with Scottie Scheffler. You talked about the drama box there and things like that, but he's got a molded grip on his 7-iron. He consistently uses that all the time just to calibrate, make sure his hands are on there. You always see alignment sticks down there. He's working on the most simplest of things to make a complex movement easy.
Randy Smith has been guiding him since he was 7 or 8 years old. Yeah, it's to me it's hard to put into words. You know, his face control is elite. His distance control has been absolutely better than anybody. Consistency, nobody in the same planet. You know, and I think that, you know, to be honest with you, he's got plenty of speed. You know, the iron player, the strategist, never worried really about his golf swing. Just never trying to fix it if something goes a little awry. Like when he was struggling making the turn at the PGA Championship, Teddy's, you know, missed a bunch of tee shots left, just aim a little further right, and we're golden that way. And I think there's a lot of gravity and presence on the leaderboard now. When Scheffler's name appears, it's seemingly always at the top of it.
Yeah, and also too, we can't forget the work, you know, that he does on the greens with Phil Kenyon as well. You know, we talk about, you know, his golf swing and how good and consistent that is, but also too, we've seen that meteoric rise, you know, in that putting category. You know, it was only a few years back in 2020, it was 117th, and now 77th. It was always, if it can just be good enough, he'll get it done and he'll be dominant. And that's all he needs to do, is just be good enough with the putter.
Looking to go back-to-back, the only player to have ever done that, if he's able to accomplish it, winning the FedEx Cup in consecutive seasons. Last year here in Memphis, notable finishes. Hideki, of course, it was a seesaw affair coming down the stretch, a couple of late bogeys and a double, but was able to hold on and get it done with birdies on 17 and 18. Schauffele streaked to the finish line, 15 under. Hovland the same. Hovland played his way inside the top 50. You may remember with that tie for second here last year. And of course, Scottie Scheffler, he knows his way around this place. Not afraid to post some rounds of 66 or better. Nearly 7 of them. And you talk about bogey-free rounds in the playoffs. Yeah, Scottie Scheffler, double digits in terms of not dropping a shot when he tees off in a round in the playoff. It's been an interesting campaign for Xander Schauffele. Of course, had to take time off for the rib injury, the intercostal muscle that wasn't cooperating. And Craig Perks, it took him a little time to find his rhythm and find his comfort zone again. But apparently he found it when he was in Scotland.
Well, undisputed second best player in the world last year with those 2 victories, right? And then obviously you talked about dealing with the rib cage injury. He said last year it was look at target, hit target. When he returned, that talent to me has sort of disappeared. The hands are now on the steering wheel. He said he's tried to correct an assortment of flaws in his golf swing. He said the hardest part is taking the hands off the wheel and just go out and play golf again. He's a guy that's made the Tour Championship 8 consecutive years, and he comes in here 43rd. Now, if he can just make it to Eastlake, he has won that event as a rookie, and without the starting strokes, he might have won it two more times as well. So he finds himself in a precarious situation. He's only played 13 times this year with the injury and so on and so forth. But it's amazing when you talked about the simplicity of the way Scottie Scheffler goes about it, and why is Xander Schauffele struggling, you know, getting the club a little shut, getting the inside, trying to get in at a better position at the top, but a lot more thought on the golf swing instead of just see target, hit target.
Colin, what do you make of where his golf swing is now?
Yeah, it's always interesting. You know, he had so much success with his father, Stefan, as basically his primary swing coach. And then now, you know, you start winning major championships, you get to, you know, arguably, to Craig's point, the second best player in the world. And then it's suddenly, I'm going to start seeing Chris Como. I'm going to start working with Chris Como to try and elevate my game even more. And when you start with a new instructor, it's new fields, new positions, you become so much more inwardly focused that you're not that point-and-shoot person that you need to be. You need to be so much more outwardly focused. You need to be more right brain, less thinking and things like that. And that's where a lot of players, and you know, when you look at the season for Xander Schauffele, that's been evident.
How do you do that? How do you separate the point and shoot, which is what you want when you're in a tournament under pressure, but also you got to go through the technical changes and trials?
I personally, I think it's done. I think it's done at home. And what I mean by that, you can do all the work on the range, right? I actually think the club's in a much better position at the top. You just get a little flat, a little laid off, and now across the line. Now it's in a much better spot. But I think you have to devote a lot of time at home to go play. You have to walk away from the range. You've done all the work, go play, and put yourself. You know, TrackMan's now come up with this performance center within the track, so you can do that. You can go strokes gained but I think it takes the discipline of making that step from the range to go play, especially at home, because you work on my golf swing like Scottie Scheffler. I've done the Scheffler says, I've done the preparation, got to go play.
Three top tens here at TPC Southwind, including that tie for second last year for Xander. You mentioned it. He's just outside the top 40 in the FedEx Cup points list. And how about the turnaround from Kitayama, who's 52nd now on the FedEx Cup points list, trying to play his way inside the top 50. We will study his game and his action coming up next. TPC Southwind, for the fourth consecutive season, holds down the first leg of the playoffs, the FedEx Cup playoffs, as we welcome you back to On the Range. We're live here in Memphis, presented by ReliaQuest. Golf course that's going to stretch out this year, the longest that it's played, nearly 7,400 yards after the renovation this offseason. A man who will certainly welcome the new length, Kitayama, who a winner just a couple of weeks ago, and our man down on the ground. Caught up with him. Let's send it down to Sean Martin.
Kurt, some good play this summer, highlighted by that win at the 3M Open. What are some things in your game you felt like have maybe clicked this summer?
I think this last probably month, 2 months, it's been kind of in my swing, and just you work on stuff all year, and so kind of felt like things come together, and they're coming together at the right time.
You've been working now with Chris Como for a couple years, and some decent changes to the top of the backswing especially are probably what's most notable. Can you describe maybe what the club looked like at the top of the backswing before, and then what you and Chris have changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think before I started working with him, my hands were really upright and maybe not, getting a little bow. It was more cupped, I'd say. And kind of the big thing was getting a little deeper, maybe even more laid off with kind of a bow feeling at the top. Kind of helped me get out of falling back in my swing and staying more on top of it.
And how has that changed things for you in the downswing? as far as being able to flatten it out maybe and then turn through it?
Yeah, it's kind of gotten more consistent. The misses are smaller, because before, if I'm falling back, I got to do some manipulation with the hands through impact to try and, save it. I still get a little bit of that, I think, but before it felt like I couldn't even get the hands fast enough to try and save it, swinging so fast. And so this kind of made it more consistent, more manageable.
And it looked like yesterday when you were hitting balls, you're working on really letting the club kind of drop and get in front of the hands as it got below waist high. What was the feel there that you were trying to feel?
Yeah, I was just trying to get, probably a little more bow. Sometimes, everything creeps back from before. So trying to get a little more bow at the top. And then, I'll try and keep it, a little more bow and the hands more on the right side as I try to get the club head more out in front. Because before it was kind of, I'd kind of dump it under like that. And so that's kind of the main focus.
Perfect. Well, thanks for the insights. Congrats on the success this summer, and we'll let you get to work.
Thanks.
Came together at just the right time. 20 events so far this season, 8 missed cuts, but a win at the 3M Open, where he bookended 65s and squeezed in a 60 as well in his last 4 events. The stroke play varieties, 56 under par with nearly 15 rounds in the 60s.
About 20 birdies on the weekend up at TPC Twin Cities there at the 3M. It was 60-65 to your point. And, remember, he won a signature event back in 2023, Bay Hill, but he'd said it was one more on grit rather than completeness. And I think that, the driver was, you talked about manipulation with the hands. When he had the speed that he had to try and match that up, it was going all over the place. But there have been some real improvements, and not only, I think, in the positions in the golf swing, but statistically to match those. And that gives you, guys, that gives you a lot of confidence. Okay, so he's been working with Como for a couple of years, right? You decide to make these changes. He was very articulate. But then you say, okay, it feels good. It looks good on camera. But when you see the stats to back that up, he's gone from 126 off the tee. These are Sean Martin. He was so kind to share those with us. 126 off the tee 2 years ago to 11th this year. He's gone from 50th in distance to 8th. Man, that gives you a boost of confidence knowing this day and age, it's power and speed and distance and proficiency off the tee is such an advantage.
So the statistics, as you say, are a good illustration of the swing changes working, but Colin Swatton, what kind of changes has he made?
Well, I think when we take a look at these swing breakdown right now, I think it's going to make it so much more obvious about what it was. On the left, this is pre-Chris Como. On the right is after Chris Como. And I put a couple of lines on here just representing both shaft plane and turn shoulder plane here to take a little bit of a deeper dive into this swing change that he was talking about. You'll see on the left there, as he takes it back, that shaft gets super vertical. Look at those hands way above plane on the way at the backswing there. As we take a look now on the right-hand side, we'll start to see a difference. This arrow here just representing, look at that, how he rolls it in, gets it deeper. He talked about that. And now look at the difference between these two. You'll see the hands at the top of the swing, so much flatter, now on shoulder plane. And that is a significant difference. He talked about having to dump it underneath in order to be able to sort of release it. This is what we start to see here. Look at how far these hands are away from his body. And if we put a couple of lines on here, we're going to see the knees and the difference in those as well. The right knee really starting to kick in here, Ned. Look at that right hip, how much higher it is. He talked about room to get these hands down and sort of in front of his body a little bit more. And you can see the differences there, that right knee, right hip, so much different. Hand position on the left, way outside his body. The only way that club head's going to hit the ball is if you drop it on inside. That's how you create that two-way miss. Big block to the right, big hook to the left. And you can see now a much, much better position on the right-hand side to deliver the club and all that speed and power that you talked about, Craig, into the ball. It's a much better golf swing and significant changes.
That's significant. You don't ever see changes are so minute that you can not see them. And I'm not being disrespectful here at all. We've gone from a mini Jim Furyk to a textbook golf swing, just swinging up and down a plane. It is remarkable. And then to back it up with that, get that second victory, man, he's got to be riding high. And the belief and the confidence that he now has a golf swing that is reliable, that he can trust in those pressure situations.
Big changes, big results.
Yeah, it's like before his win, he'd only had 2 top 5s. You know, he's played 20 events. He'd only made 12 cuts. You know, and I'm always looking as a coach, you know, if I can put that hat on, I look at it and I think, what was the catalyst? What's the difference? Why did that spark? And you talked about it. It's confidence. It's the belief in his team, belief in the journey, and the belief in what I'm working on is there.
Got his brother Daniel on the bag too, 5 years older. And he was actually, I was covering at on the main field at 3M, and he had, coming down the stretch on 18, a par 5, he had a chance to shoot 59, drove it in the rough. He had the second shot going over the water, and Daniel, his caddy, his brother, said, let's just lay this up. Let's lay it up to a smart spot. He ended up getting the ball up and down for a birdie to shoot 60, but he could have gone for that. He'd just come off a bogey at 17. He could have gone for that, dumped it in the water, and lost all of that momentum. But I think so the calming influence of the brother, first time on the bag there to get a victory. And I think that was wise from a strategic standpoint as well.
You mentioned confidence a couple of times during that week on the opening 9 holes. The front 9, he shot 28 and 29.
29, exactly.
Dangerous man who's playing well and has so much to play for. Get inside the top 50, make your way to the BMW Championship next week, and you're into all the signature events next season. As you said, that can be career-changing, Craig Burks. But you got to be able to handle this golf course. There is treachery and trouble lurking. TPC Southwind showing off on a Wednesday. First leg of the playoffs, Memphis, Tennessee. 32-year-old Sepp Straka, 3rd in the FedEx Cup. Craig Burks is 11th in the world. 6 top 10s this season, including the 2 wins. He actually led the FedEx Cup points race a couple of weeks earlier in the season. He has become a reliable hitter of the ball. When the putter gets going, it just looks like nothing is going to miss the hole.
New stratosphere when you win Cognizant, and then you win John Deere, and then you win American Express, and then you win a signature event, the Truist. So now you've you have this belief. I think that's continuing to grow. I think the best way to describe the Austrian is like a classic timepiece. Simple, efficient, and reliable. And I just think that he talked about not being a tinkerer, sort of based on his routine. And I think when you talked about the 2 wins, 3rd at Memorial, 5th at API at the Bay Hill, 7th at Pebble and Scottish. So now he's elevating his performance at some really tough tracks. And I think that gives you a lot of confidence as well. And Cole, so what do we got going on here? And it's hard. They use these alignment sticks in a lot of different ways. I haven't seen too many under the right arm.
Yeah, I had the chance to talk to him a little bit about this drill at the Travelers Championship. He said he just gets a little bit disconnected. He feels by putting that alignment right under the arm, he can just keep a connection between his body rotation and the club. And he really credits that to the consistency that he's having on the golf course.
I think he's worked on his fitness as well. John Tillery's been alongside with the golf swing, but I think also, from a strength and stamina standpoint, I think those are important, especially later on in a season. You talked about the 37th event of the season. These guys are playing 20-plus events. Now we're at the heat of Memphis. We're going to go to Atlanta as well.
And, of course, he lost the playoff here. It was 3 years ago, 2022, to Will Zalatoris. It's interesting when you go through where he's played well and won, Craig, they're all different golf courses. And that says, at least to me, that his game travels.
Yeah, it's sort of like when Scottie Scheffler started winning. He won twice at Sawgrass, and he's also won twice at Bay Hill. And he's won at Harbour Town, and he's won at Augusta National. So, no, I think that comes from the belief. You talked about he's a good hitter of the golf ball, very consistent, tee to green 3rd, strokes gained total, does a lot of things well. But I also believe, it's the confidence and the belief that now to get those you win 2 consecutive years, and then you win multiple times in one season, the confidence is sky high.
I just think about even the agronomy of those courses. Talking about Pebble Beach, where he almost won, Poana greens. Then you go to bent grass greens, and the truest, even the John Deere. I mentioned the playoff loss here, Bermuda to its core, this place. I guess it's just if you're good, Colin Swatton, you're good.
Yeah, and I love his demeanor as well. He's not one of those guys that gets out there. He doesn't get flustered. We're going to pan back there, that man on the back there, Dwayne Bach, also too, a very similar personality. They don't get flustered. They are not afraid of the moment. And that travels also, is that ability to not be overwhelmed by anything.
Mentally strong. You wouldn't want to have to face him in the Ryder Cup. But you probably got to have to at some point. Take a look at the season, 20 events, 16 of the times he found the weekend. Couple of wins, 4th in scoring. It's a man who knows what he's doing when he steps on the golf course. Has a chance to maybe put his hands on the hardware. Has to get to Atlanta, but right now, looking pretty good. Sepp Straka is 3rd in the FedEx Cup points race. Finishing touches being put on the preparations for the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoff as we welcome you back on the range, live here at TPC Southwind, presented by ReliaQuest. Everybody deep in the numbers, trying to find perhaps the right feel that gets them to the winner's circle. We saw it last week, a golf ball grip change in mentality for Cameron Young, and finally he was to victory lane. What about Ricky Fowler? He's just inside the top 70. He's had some flashes this season. He's been better.
Oh, no doubt he's been better. And I caught up with him at the Wyndham Championship in this club here, the driver. It was interesting when I was talking to Ricky Romano, his caddy, and he was testing another mini driver, and he was using a mini driver. And I said, are we looking at a club change here? And you know, what's going on? And he actually gave me a really good number, which was mind-blowing. And this is to Ricky's point of trying to hit more fairways, dialing back. He only hit a real driver, if we could call it that, driver, 8 times the entire season. You know, he's just stuck with this mini driver. He believes that what he gives up a little bit in distance, he gains in accuracy off the tee, and that allows you to show up a little bit more and play to his strength, which is his iron game.
Well, before it was called a mini driver, Henrik Stenson rode a 3-wood / mini driver all the way to FedEx Cup victory. And it's, Craig, is it as much about the mentality of knowing where your game is strong and where it's weak, and if I get it in the fairway, I can do some work from there, versus taking driver and hitting it into the rough?
Well, I think with today's technology, the club head goes, let's just say mini driver goes too far and the ball goes too straight. So now you're not losing anything with that mini driver, and you can gain a little bit of confidence. You know, comes into this week 64th. I've had the good fortune. I worked John Deere. I worked 3M. We paid a lot of attention to Ricky Fowler. His striking is as good as I've seen it in the last 2 or 3 years, especially his short iron play. He is absolutely knocking down flags, inconsistent on the greens. I think the club is in a good a position as I've ever seen it. I know when he went back to Butch at the end of 2022, the changes were simple but significant. He went from flat and laid off to the club in a much better position. I think, to your point, Cole, when you go to a mini driver and you have this confidence, you swing a little bit more freely. I mean, look at the golf swing. The speed is there. He's upwards of 180 mile an hour. That's well above tour average. You know, and you can just see the freedom with which he's swinging. You know, he's coming off a season where it was a very popular guy to get these sponsors exemptions. He got 5 into signature events. He got a special invitation into the PGA. One of those allowed him to finish 7th at Memorial. You talked about, you know, he's coming in with form. 14th at the Open, 18th at John Deere. He's had 6 top 20s. I think he's on the cusp. Now, unfortunately, the season might finish after this week, and then we'll certainly play. We'll love to see Ricky play in the fall. But you know, things have changed at home now with more children, and I think the winning would mean a lot, but it doesn't mean it does not mean as much as it used to. So I think you have to bring that into consideration. But I think he is really right on the cusp of playing very well. I hope the season doesn't end from this week.
Well, it's one thing to get those invitations. It's another thing to use them. As you mentioned, the good finish at the Open, of course, that came from the good finish at Jack's place. So he had an invitation a few years ago back at Kiowa to the PGA Championship where he had a nice finish. And it's just that the statistics bear that he's playing better. And when I use the word better, it's what he said at the beginning of the season was, I need to do everything better. I need to drive it better. I need to hit my irons better. I need to putt better.
Yeah, I think he would be very pleased with the striking. He just needs to be more consistent with the putting. You know, when you devote so much time to the changes and working on the golf swing, you neglect an area of the part of the game that he was as good as anyone in the world with his putter. So that during, you know, that probably 10-year stretch when he was at one point the best American in the world.
Well, most of these players have their TrackMan out with him, and our tracer technology is presented by TrackMan. There's a player out on the range right now we're going to catch up with, the U.S. Open champion. Essentially, you set the TrackMan up, and wherever it's pointing is where he's going to hit it. It's remarkable, Collins Watton, how good of a ball striker he has become, specifically with his irons.
Yeah, a lot of credit has to go to that man on one knee. Just went off our screen there. Adam Schreiber. He has really turned this young man's career around. You know, JJ has talked about the mental barriers that he's had and the confidence, and he really accredits that to Adam Schreiber. And also, too, you know, let's not forget the health challenges that this guy has to deal with, the diabetes and things like that, you know, being able to manage that. It's hard when you're out there for 5 hours on the golf course to maintain the sugar levels that you need to and things like that. Also, too, a little shout out there to Mark Cairns. He's played an integral part in this meteoric rise to the top for JJ Spaun.
5 top 10s on the season.
What I can't get over is 64 feet and 5 inches. That's what I can't get over. The 18th green in the haze and the dismal rain. You got to get down on 2 to win a U.S. Open. You know, and I go back to the Players Championship. You know, to me, he shied away from the spotlight because these are his words. He was afraid of feeling embarrassed when he put himself in position to win golf tournaments, that he would stumble and fall and play poorly. And you cannot compete on the PGA Tour that way. The way he performed at the Players Championship was so admirable, coming down the stretch against Rory McIlroy and even in the playoff, going to Monday morning. And I think what that is that he said he never knew how good he could be. That gave him, again, we've said belief. So that gives him a little bit of bump in confidence. And then now to make a 65-footer on the last screen to win a major championship, to go out in 14, to come home in 32, he's going to be on the Ryder Cup team. You talked about the striking. To those tee shots coming down the stretch at 17 and 18, to have that reliable cut that you can trust in the cauldron of tension and emotion. You nearly think that JJ Spaun's going to win many more times, and I think we should by the way he swings the golf club.
Lost in a playoff at the Sony Open to Nick Taylor earlier in the season. Lost in a playoff at the Players Championship. Broke through in a big way at the United States Open. JJ Spaun, and he's out there throwing some darts. Those balls landing one on top of the other. Welcome back to On the Range, live at TPC Southwind, presented by ReliaQuest. We just saw JJ Spaun, the reigning United States Open champion, working on his wedges, and he is standing by with Sean Martin.
JJ, obviously an incredible year, and one of the stats that stands out is strokes gained approach the green. You're up to 8th on tour this year. Any changes in the swing this year that have contributed to those strong ball striking stats?
I wouldn't say changes, more of trying to keep things more consistent. We've kind of found like a blueprint for what I got to do to make sure my setup's the same, and that's kind of the foundation we've been working with to keep the swing where it's been at. And I think I've seen more consistency this year because we've been keeping more attention to that part of my swing.
A couple things I've seen you do out on the range over this year. One is one-arm swings. Looks like your left hand holding the right elbow. What's the feel there that you're going for with that drill?
Yeah, that's more of like a connection drill. I think a lot of my swing is like rotational, very rotary. So I try to keep the connection with the shoulders, the arms, and that kind of forces me to turn. So it's a nice way to, implement the rotation in my backswing and also on the through swing. So yeah, that's just a big component in my swing, is trying to keep that rotational piece in there.
And finally, yesterday hitting some shots with really abbreviated follow-throughs, look like maybe controlling the face. What's the feel there?
That's exactly what it is. I'm trying to, get some face awareness, a full swing, but then a sudden stop after impact kind of tells you where the face is aimed at impact. So once you kind of nail that down, it kind of makes it easier to hit a full shot and control the shape and trajectory from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the insights, and congrats on a wonderful year.
And we look at those, those stats there by strokes gained approach that Sean Martin just talked about, that rise from 127th to 8th, but you combine that with a putting stat from 172nd to 53rd and around the green from 134th to 95th. That all gets your scoring average, Craig Perks, from 171st in 2021 to 8th, 2025. Just amazing work.
And speaking with a lot of confidence, they have the blueprint, right? This is, I want to be more consistent. It goes back to a setup, right? So now the belief that you have this, we talked about it earlier with Kitayama. If you make some changes and then you see it looks good on camera and then you get the results statistically and then you get a win, it's the same thing with JJ. I think the consistency, the setup, you're talking about face awareness. These are all things that Scottie Scheffler talks about on a consistent basis.
Matthew Fitzpatrick comes in 41st in the FedEx Cup race. He didn't have his best stuff, to say the least. That would be an understatement by his own estimation. And finally, at the Players' Championship, Fitzpatrick said, enough is enough. He brought on Mark Blackburn to help him figure out what was going on. And Colin, since then, he's been on a tear. You look at his last 9 events and comes in with 3 consecutive top 10s, including a pair of top 5s. What'd they find?
Yeah, well, when you dial the clock back to 2024, he was 102nd in strokes gained off the tee. He is 58th this year. He's 127th in strokes gained approach, now 79th. So all the numbers are definitely going in the right direction. And it's that man there, Mark Blackburn, in the blue shirt, that has a significant difference. He's, Matt's been with Pete Cowan for over 15 years. He made a caddy change in Billy Foster, now a coach change, moving to that man there. So, he felt that he needed to make these changes. Despite having success, he still feels that he has more room to grow and more room to become even maybe a more complete player.
He said his game was rubbish.
I was trying to be nice.
At the truest, where he was 117th in the FedEx Cup. He comes in here 41st. He's dropped he's risen from 85th in the world to 38th.
This is what he had to say about working with Mark Blackburn. He said, I got to understand my tendencies a lot better, to understand what I need to do to fix that. Started working with Mark Blackburn, and he's given me a lot of time. I feel like just a bit of change of information has made me understand myself a little bit better. Craig, unpack that for us.
Well, again, it's you have this blueprint. You have your own DNA. You have your own thumbprint. And when you wander away from home plate, then you get lost. You're in the wilderness. And I think if you get a a trusted voice, and Mark is well respected. Obviously, both Englishmen, and I think Mark has worked with Matt's brother, Alex, who's won on the Challenge Tour over in Europe. And so there's some familiarity there. But I just, I think sometimes we believe that there's greener grass, greener pastures over the fence, and there's not. And I think when you start wandering far away from home plate, you can get lost. During that stretch you talked about, he's had 4 top 8s in a row. In those last 16 rounds, he is 7th best in ball striking in that span and 2nd best in short game. So, it's all facets of the game. He's working on his golf swing. To me, the club's set in a much better position. But it's also the short game and the putting. And I think Luke Donald had a little word with him and said, if you don't play better, you're not going to be on this Ryder Cup team. So that's motivation enough to get up to New York and help the Euros win an away game.
I call it the cool uncle syndrome. Pete Cowan is very well respected, has huge success as a coach, but sometimes you just need your cool uncle to come around and tell you to tidy things up in your room, and it's a different message put in a different way, and it holds so much more gravity, and that might be the case there for Matt.
And of course, Mark Blackburn with Justin Rose, was with Max Homa. His stable has been full of thoroughbreds for the last really 5 to 8 years. And speaking of thoroughbreds, how about this guy? Think he's got any horsepower? Ludwig Oberg. We're going to study his action when we come back to Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee, that's where we are for the opening leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs, TPC Southwind. Some notable pairings for you folks. Jordan Spieth and Wyndham Clark go out together at 8:40 a.m. Cameron Young and Shane Lowry. And then Russell Henley and Justin Thomas, 2 good buddies at 10:45. Schauffele and Potgieter, that ought to be a ball striker's delight. Oberg and McIntyre, Scheffler and Straka at 1:45. Who are you all watching of all those groups? Which has your attention?
I think I'd go with the 12-10s, Xander Schauffele and Aldrich Potgieter.
I know, what's this guy? Go on, see elegance in a golf swing.
Half man, half machine, isn't he? 25 years of age, 14th right now in the FedEx Cup points.
And I think when you look at good players or even great players, which he is, I look for consistency in the message, and he's been with Hans Larsen since he was 15 years old. You're smiling already, Craig. I like that.
Please keep going.
No, it's
because I am really concerned with the inconsistency. With this guy is when he's at his best, which is he's as elite as anybody. But man, the misses, ups and downs, and I understand this journey has just begun. The golf swing is one to emulate and admire, and he has some attributes to it that are sensational, but I just see some big misses, and I'm not miscuts or wide misses, which I can't fathom from watching that golf swing.
Is that because our expectations for him perhaps are too high?
Well, I think that, his journey has been wonderful. 4 years at Texas Tech, #1 in PGA Tour U, so refined the skill set and came out and had so much success, quickly won over in Europe when Luke Donald said, would you mind going over there and playing? And then has, won pretty quickly, and then to win the Genesis, but it was at Torrey Pines to win a signature event. I think our expectations should be high. If you look at some of the inconsistencies in performances, we drop off the board pretty quickly, and then we come back up. To your point, love the consistency with the same instructor. I want to see more consistency with the numbers.
Yeah, you just don't know potentially what's happening in the world, of Ludwig. And so much off the course can translate to on the course. He's now a world star,
yep.
and and things like that. I'm sure he has a special someone that he wants to spend some time with, things like that. So I always look at seasons as it's a season, it's a day. It's like the stock market. We don't get too involved what it's doing every day. I look at the consistency over a year or a career, and I just think that he has a great team behind him. That man there, Joe Skovron, and the message, with Hans Larsen, and also too is he's just not a swing instructor. He's also too one of those coaches that likes that more holistic, way of coaching. He looks at the body, he looks at nutrition, he looks at the mental game, the tactical side of things as well. So, he hasn't had the season we want, but at the same time too, he's definitely got the superstar status.
Aspirational pace of play too. Just get up, see ball, hit ball. I love that.
This is not a golf course, though, where you can afford the foul ball.
No.
It will punish you.
But I just think the lines are so good and generates a lot of speed. The hit is at the right spot. Certainly needs to improve the wedge game, the distance control, and the consistency.
So if you made it here, now the goal and the mission is to advance to the BMW Championship next week. Caves Valley, the top 50, and then if you get there, one more step. It sounds so simple to ease your way down Peachtree, down to Atlanta, Georgia, the Tour Championship. But if you make it into the top 30, a 2-year exemption. The Masters and the Majors await. But of course, next week, the BMW Championship. If you can advance into the top 50, you earn the signature events next season. And Craig Perks, you've mentioned just how critical that can be to a player's career.
Yeah, I think it is. And with the way that the tour is now structured, these top 50, the signature events are so important. We're trimming some of the fat. The exempt numbers are coming down. So when you get into those top 50 events, a lot of those are non-cut. Elevated FedEx Cup points, the purses are huge. I just think that that's where every player wants to be.
Okay. It's time for picks. It's one of the endeavors that we always take on here on the range. So let's get right to it. Looking for who you think's going to win, and then maybe somebody who's on the outside but has a chance can get their hands on the hardware.
Well, I think I spoke about it in the opener. I think the importance is on hitting the fairways here. We've got 12 dog legs on this golf course this week, 6 narrowest fairways on the PGA Tour. We've got 5 holes with water in play this week. That's the issue. So I look straight to a man.
Come on, man.
21st in strokes gained off the tee, 18th in strokes gained tee to green. I think last week's course at Wyndham was similar to this. I'm picking Aaron Rai.
I like it. I'm going with the cool uncle syndrome. Matt Fitzpatrick, 4 top 8s in a row in performance, 3 top 6 finishes here at TPC Southwind.
You heard it here first. Aaron Rai, Matthew Fitzpatrick. It's been so nice to have your company. Remember, live first round coverage of the FedEx St. Jude Championship can be found early on ESPN Plus at 8:15 Eastern Time. Golf Channel's first round coverage starts right here at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Look forward to having your company.